it's recording. Dorian, talk to us about math across row pages in a grid list.
Cool. So I guess I'll just go over the question. So it's like, how do you do math across row pages in a grid list? I guess there's many different methods, but one easy method is if you're using the built-in grid element, when you set the data into that element, obviously every object is a row, a record essentially. You have access to all the variables, which are the fields and values. They get set as variables on every row page on that grid. And what you can do is on the parent page where you have the main grid element, you can just do a simple path just called sum, open parentheses, and then just put the field ID that you're trying to sum up, and that's it. That will add up the values from all the rows in that grid list. Hopefully that made sense. We can't hear you, Cora.
I'm sorry, I forgot about the mute button. I was just saying, if BiggieBie has, if that's not enough for you and you need to actually see it, I'm sure we can show you or spin up a video. But
yeah, and then
actually spin up like the SAS starter or something so that we can kind of like show where these fields are as we're going.
Many different scenarios, so it'll really determine on the setup.
Okay.
You know, but I would have to look at their exact setup to know exactly which method to go with. Other alternatives would be you can always just write your own custom JavaScript functions to do anything you want.
Okay, that sounds good. Okay. All right, so next up, Maestro, are you in the call? I don't know if you are.
That's me. That's
Eli?
me. Yeah.
Eli. Okay, Maestro. Okay, Eli, you want to know about the function of components and dynamic components?
Yeah. What's happening is that we're building some like MVP front end, and we're figuring out how to make one component to be able to be using it to use that component in every step of the front end. And when I modify this component or main component, obtain that modification in the sons of that component. I can't figure it out.
Yeah, do you have a project maybe?
By example.
Yeah, do you have an example you can share us and we can take a look? Or
yeah, actually my team is Israel, Y, Neiro, and Angie. Those are all of my team, and we are here to find out how to make this work. Cool. So in this case, I will ask for Y, that's my brother, his name is Jonathan, to share the screen. Are you there, Red?
Yeah, we can actually. I don't know if I can share the screen. Yeah, I can share it. Give me a second, please.
Yeah, no problem.
I'm actually rooting a lot about Builder. I found out Builder by casualty. I actually found first Fraser. I actually met with Fraser before, and he inspired me to like, man, if you design this, you will accomplish this in software. So you will make it. So that was like very encouraging to me. And I said to my team, like, let's try this tool. And they didn't believe me until now, but we are finding some little issues maybe.
Yeah, absolutely. Fraser's awesome. He's
he is.
So much knowledge and wisdom, like not even just in Builder, but outside of that, just building and development in general. So that's a good connection to have. So yeah, walk us through what you're working with here.
Already, I don't looking on this screen.
We hear you very bad, I think, or it's only me.
No, it's hard to understand too.
I'm sorry. I'm having connectivity issues. Give me 1 sec to see if I can do something for it. Maybe,
well, my brother is a robot, I think.
Yeah.
Are you speaking Spanish?
Yeah, Dorian and I can speak Spanish. Yes. we can.
Entonces hablemos español. Fantástico.
Que cambiar el idioma.
Well, we would do that on a one-on-one call, but since we've got everyone here, and we want to share the knowledge, if we can, if y'all can, we'll do English. But any follow-up or chat in the Discord, we're down to do Spanish. Absolutely.
Nice to know.
Thank you.
And then
Okay,
Dee, sounds like maybe we can do an overview of the actual component element, if that would be helpful.
Yeah, I can do that.
Once we
And-
actually see.
Or we can see, let's see if we can hear him. No.
Buenas tardes.
Maybe Nito does it and we talk about it. I don't know.
Yeah, I can just show it, then I can show my screen and kind of just go over an example, and then
Okay,
just
nice.
let me know
That will work.
if that's like the setup you guys are going for. Let me make my screen smaller though, so everybody can see that.
So components are awesome because basically kind of similar to what Eli said, you can design a page and then essentially use the component element to replicate that page. So it's great for things like headers, footers, things that menus that you'll be seeing over and over again. And then you can just make an update in that main page that's set as the component page, and then that should carry through. So it's great as far as like making things quickly iterating. There is also the option to create blocks. So if it's something that you're going to be maybe like an input with like an input field with like a button or some sort of little setup like that you may reuse frequently, you can create a block and then it'll sit in your blocks list and just reuse that and make small modifications as needed, and it doesn't change anything else. So depending on what your use case is, it may be smarter to use a block or it may be smarter to use a component. And then
I am not sure about the difference. What's really the difference? I didn't get it.
So maybe I'll just go over it and then
Yeah.
it might make a little bit more sense. Okay, so this is just a blank project that I just created, and I just created a blank page, just called it home, nothing special. And then what I did was I actually dropped a block, which a block you can kind of think of, it's just a page with all of its elements in it. It's something that's reusable, but every time you drop a new block, it's a separate instance. It's not linked in any way. And that's the difference between a block and a component, because a component, you're not going to get all the child elements. Essentially, a component is just referencing another page, is really what's happening behind the scenes. So for example, I started here and I just went to the blocks and I just dropped this header. When I dropped it, it created a page. And then that block has all of these child elements in it. You know, it's the image and all the details. And I just called this my header. So now let's say I'm building a site and I don't want to have to manage this header on all my pages. Like let's say I have a home page, I have an about page, or whatever the pages are. So instead of having to rebuild or copying this to every page, and then later down the road, if you want to make a change, now you have to make the changes on all the pages. That's the benefit of using a component. Because essentially what that will do is on this home page, I'm not going to copy this block or manually build this header into the home page. Instead, what I'll do is drop the component element. And once that comes through on the right side on the properties, what you're doing here is you're just selecting the page that this component is referencing. So in my case, it'd be the header, which is this page over here. And by selecting that, that's just rendering that header. and making that reference on the home page. But if you look here, we don't have any of its child elements here. So I don't know, hopefully that makes sense.
Yeah, that absolutely. Can I pass data to that component?
Absolutely. Yeah, so by default, there's nothing here like built in as properties where you can pass it directly, but you can do it through variables. So for example, if you're on the home page, you can set.
We would like to, I'm sorry if I interrupt.
Yeah, go ahead.
We would like to do a very basic example. Would you be able to create a simple button that you can use as a component and let's say pass a variable with the label to update the label with the button?
Yeah, we can do this button here. So what I'll do is I'll create 2 pages that we can have 2 different scenarios. Actually, apparently clicking enter does copy that. There's just a delay. We'll just delete this one. Okay, so right now I just duplicate. I called one home, I called one about. I'm just going to create some quick routes just to go to those pages in the preview. Nothing there. And we'll call this one about. I don't need to change anything there. Okay, so now we have a home page and an about page that we can access through a route. And let's say when we're on the home page, I want this header component to grab the name of, let's just say the route, and change the value here. Instead of saying sign up, it can just say the route we're in. So we're going to go to the actual page that contains the elements. And what we're going to do is you can do this as your own flow and then just nest it, but essentially it needs to be called through the page load, whether it's nested or just directly on it. But what I would start with, I would just do a condition switch where I'm getting, let's just say the request, and what could we do? We'll just do a query string. We'll just call it value. And if it says home, we're going to do one thing. If it says about, we're going to do another thing. And here I'm just going to create separate flows to tie into these conditions for setting the different things. So I'm just doing a set value. And what we want to change is this sign up. And this one's going to say about, or let me just copy that. This one's going to say home. And if we go back to our condition, that one's about, this one's home. Trying to think, I guess it's fine. We can just do it like that. So we only need to look at the one page.
Quick question.
Yeah.
If I have a component with a flow, a determined flow, and I use it in somewhere else, will I be able to maintain that flow, or I have to copy it again?
If they're on separate pages, then you can nest, or if they're separate pages, it depends. You can definitely copy the entire flow just by going to the left side and just going to copy, and then this will become available to paste the whole flow. In this case, I didn't want to copy the flow because I had already created my 2 flows. I just wanted to copy the action instance inside of this flow. So in that case, I copied within this right side here. And then I went to the flow that I already had and pasted it within there. So there are differences, you know, so the left sides are the actual flows. When you have a flow open, these are the action instances inside of a flow.
Okay, but I'm not sure if I'm not getting it, but in what case do I do maintain the flow?
To do what? Or maybe I'm not understanding the question.
Maybe, I don't know, I have a component that when I click it, does open a URL, maybe. And when I use that component in anywhere else, do I have the option to maintain that flow exactly the same open URL?
You can, and it just depends. Like if you're trying to call that same flow from another page, then you would use what's called the run flow on page. And this allows you to select the page and the flow that already exists on that page to run that action.
I think what he may be asking Dwayne is if he's got like a flow set up on that component for like, when you click this button, it does this thing. I think what he's asking is if he uses that component on other pages, is that same setup going to work?
Yeah.
The answer is yes, because that everything that you've built on that component is a page.
Yeah.
So everything that you've made on there, the styling, the flows, etc., will run wherever you nest that component.
Yeah.
Okay.
You'll have access to everything.
What I was expecting of a component.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. The key thing there would be to make sure that you're passing the data through variables up to the root so that the component can access that content dynamically. Like, for example,
actually, that's why I was asking if we were be able to pass the for example, the label of the button in a variable. In this case, you're actually just getting the information from the URL. It's different than getting it from the from a variable. Because if I need to, I don't know, set up something, some dynamic fields that I could set the information from I don't know, an API call. So I would like to understand how I could pass the information through the variable.
Yeah, we'll do that now. That way you can see it. Got it. I just misunderstood the question. Okay, so I'm on the home page. So I just threw a button just to call the action, but you can do it on page load or do it whenever you want to call the action. Key thing here is to throw that variable in the root. The reason is all root variables can be accessed by all other pages that you're loading. And we'll just call it test, the variable name, and then the value would just be something.
So I'm sorry, that means the components are not actually injected within the shadow DOM. I mean, because I need to share all the variables across the whole page.
Yeah, you have to share all the variables on the root to have access to them from the page that is the component. That's correct.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah. What exactly are you guys like trying to achieve on the component?
Yeah, it's because actually we're building an MVP for it's a core selling company. It's an MVP to control everything internally. It's not for end-up users, but for, let's say, specialized user, because it's the internal personnel of the company that's going to work with it. But the thing is, we are currently developing things using Vue, for example, Vue. We are building web components and we are using frameworks for that. And we're trying to see if we can like create micro front ends for some solutions. But we're trying to achieve it using the same aesthetics, for example, that we have already in Figma. So we are trying to know if we can replicate the behavior of components, but not in a simple way, but in a composable way. I mean, to compose components with other components and to know how they can interact between them. That's why we're asking all of this.
Yeah, definitely. It's dynamic and reusable. But yeah, you can definitely do all of it. That's how Builder, the studio, is all designed. Like every page and every panel you see is literally its own page and a separate component. And what we do is we're just passing variables, or if we're loading those pages through open page actions, instead of using the component element, we're just passing data through. So that is an alternative as opposed to using an actual component. You can use the open page action, because that one actually does have a built-in feature where you can dynamically pass data through it.
Okay, can you show us an example of something like that?
Yeah, like, so like right now, this is the home page. Right now it's a component that loads immediately. But let's say we wanted to go the open page route instead. So to do that, you essentially need a container, like a div, to open the page into. So I just threw just an empty div. And let's just duplicate this button. And we'll call this on here. And this time I'm going to use the open page into container. And I'm still going to select that header because that's the page I'm trying to open. I'm going to select the element that I'm trying to open it into, which is this one here on the left. Just can't see it. And here you have options for passing the context to that page when it opens. And what this does is it sets all that context as variables on inside the component page already. So doing it this way, you don't need to pass variables to the root. You're passing it as you're opening the page, so they're local. They're on the current page of the component. One method is current record. This will only work if you're on an actual grid list row element. So that wouldn't apply for this setup here. Specific record allows you to go search for a specific record, and it's just going to pass an object of every field and value, a key value pair of whatever you're getting for that record. Current user, same thing, is just going to pass the current user information. But in your case, I would do a custom mapping. And this just opens a concatenate. And what you have to do here is you have to pass the final value as an object. So you have, it's a little bit of structure. So like if I wanted to pass a variable called test with a value of something, then I would string it like this. If it was just text. If you're like, if the value is coming from context of the current page, then you wouldn't do it like that. You would, change some of these, say, well, I'm getting the value from that button instead. So then you would structure it something like this. So you have to make sure it's still a valid object. So you're kind of stringing, concatenating that object together. But you can do anything you want and pass anything you want.
So concatenate is like structuring an object, a JSON object.
But some.
Concatenate, it's just the straight concat. It's just putting whatever you put in these inputs. It's concatenating, it's merging, it's putting it together. It's passed as a string, but if you send it as an object, yeah, it'll get parsed properly. So now, if I were to,
this case you're mentioning, it's possible if you click it again, inject another one.
yeah, so when I clicked it, I got the one, and because it's always pointing to that one, you'll only get the one,
Okay.
It's not gonna, it just replaces it.
Yeah.
And if that is a header, then what you could do is you could always just nest that open page to the page load. That way it just happens on, when the page is loaded. So it just depends. So see there, it just loaded with both. But one of them has that dynamic data that I passed through that object. And now I have access to that as a variable in the component. So on the component, I can then use that in actions where I'm just doing from variable, and I called it test. So the something would change that to home.
I would need to set the information for that component from an API call. like concatenate those actions.
Correct, yeah. Like if you're getting that information, then yeah. And if you're passing it, like if it's an array, you'll need to stringify it to be able to pass it through.
Okay, but how could I should store the information within something else? Because, for example, for this MVP, one of the things we are using to build the first prototype, we used to build the first prototype of the software of the system, it was Airtable. And you have that's actually one of the things why we are trying to use Builder, because you have already plugins for them. And but when I try to use the action to, for example, get a list of information from Airtable, I was only able to inject the information or the data that the API brings into an element. I mean, I wasn't able to inject the information into something else that wasn't an element. And actually, it must be a with element. That's what it says there. And I said, like, okay, well, I could inject this into some element and I just like a hidden input or something, and I will just extract the information out of it and handle it, like handle the data in this side. It's possible that I could somehow inject HTML or JavaScript code within this.
Yeah, you can put anything you want in there. The key thing is you just have to make sure you're escaping the values properly. So like if you're passing raw HTML, it's going to have like quotes, within the values and things like that. So you'll need to make sure you escape things. Yeah,
I'm sorry.
using the
Probably
backslash.
I'm sorry, I probably just mixed up two different questions in one. The question was the first. I'm sorry, I just missed it. The first was, can you, for example, use the Airtable plugins to inject the information, the data that you bring, the API brings you from to something different from an HTML element?
I'm not sure. I've actually never really used that. Which one are you doing? Like just the list, getting them?
Yeah, that one. If you see at the end, yeah, that's it. You were only able to select an element. And
Gotcha. Yeah, this action must not have that built in, but this is just using our internal API call anyways. So you don't have to use this built-in default action. This is just to make it easier. But like in your case, if you're looking for something more advanced, just use the regular API call. Because with that,
we noticed that
you can handle
noticed that
whatever.
Yeah, and when we noticed that we were actually didn't able to talk directly with Airtable, we tried to speak with our backend, but our backend is in GraphQL, and of course there is no an easy way to handle GraphQL here. And the other thing was we're of course using authentication, and the tokens expire, and we're actually just beginners. We're just starting on this. We're just exploring, and this this meeting just arrives. But we're just asking about a few things to at least get a close picture, of what we can build. And for example, in this case, let's forget about Airtable. Let's say we do an API call. How we could connect the API call with the open page into container? How we could inject the information from here, from the API table, from the API call into the variable or something for the open page?
Yeah, so it depends on what the response is. Like, what are you getting back? Is it an array, an object, comma separated values? Like what's the response?
Let's say it's an array of objects to build a table, for example.
Yeah. Then depends what you want to do with that. Like, do you just want to display it in a list for a user to see all the records?
Well, actually, no, we
Or-
would like to handle it and let's say change some information of the, yeah, because of course, as you told me, we can use, I suppose you are going to tell me that use the table view element. So if you just drop a JSON from it, the JSON is going to be printed with it. And yes, we already tested, but it was like, okay, good, but what if I just want to display a few of these values and not all of them?
Yeah, but
How could I
I always use the grid element because you have full control. The table
And so-
element, okay, but the problem with the table element is you can't customize everything. It's gonna render every field and every value that's being set for each of the objects in that array. But if you use the grid element, you set the whole array response into the grid element. That will take that whole element, but then you're creating a grid row of the data that you're actually trying to display to the end user. And that's really
Yeah.
So what- Sorry, Dorian,
And
what you're trying to say is that we can only get the response from an AP call and inject it into an element. We can't apply some sort of logic in, I don't know, in some action, some special element that you have inside the studio. We just have to receive it and inject it in the element we want to display.
No, maybe, yes, you can do anything you want. You can throw it in a variable, you can throw it into an element. And you also have to remember that Builder's fully extendable. So even if there is an element or an action that's not built in, you guys have the full ability to go into the action types and element types and create anything you want. It's really up to your imagination to do what you want to do with that data.
Sure. Let's say I have a simple JSON response from our server, and I want to make a validation. I don't know, from a string length, a number, or whatever. How should I do it? Can you show us a simple example, please, from the response to how or where can I apply that logic?
Yeah, do you guys have like an API call I can hit and get a response for the data? Or I don't have anything handy, but
Yeah, and actually we were already over halftime. So I would love, we can wrap up this one thing. And then if you guys have more, definitely join in on the next call or hit us up in the Discord and we can go through that way. We just have a little bit more time for anyone else who might have some questions or need some help today. But yeah, go. Is there an
very much.
API call y'all have? What do you need, Dorian? Like an endpoint or something?
yeah, I just need the URL and then I can, hit that endpoint, and I don't know if it requires an API key.
Do y'all have that available?
I think Israel is looking for it.
Gotcha. But yeah, maybe while they get that together, we can answer the other questions. But yeah, you can do anything you want in the studio. You're not restricted to throwing that response as it is into an element or anything like that. You can manipulate.
I think the thing that's so hard is there are many
Yeah.
different ways to do something. And so it's hard to know like which method do I go with.
Yeah, exactly.
But also like if you guys have something closely set up and you're just like missing a piece of it, you can always be like, okay, check this out. Here's what I have. Like, how do I approach like this next piece of it? I think it's a little bit harder to talk conceptually examples when we can't see like the structure of how something is set up. But if you wanted to see the API call thing, I think we can do that real quick with what do you need, Dorian? A key if it's needed, and then the URL.
Yeah, hopefully it's just a public endpoint that I can hit just with the URL and get the response, because I'll need to see what the response is and then see, like what's the data from the response that you're trying to display. Like most of the time it's not the top level, you have to use a path to drill into the specific path, retrieve that. And then it sounds like they want to do some data manipulation once they get the actual array that they're after.
Yeah. John just chatted the Star Wars API. Can we use that, D?
Let's see.
Sure, because actually we have a standard GraphQL response. I mean, with data, the same structure actually, but before we can provide it some from of our endpoints, we have to provide you with credentials so that we don't have right now. So I think that the Star Wars endpoint should be fine for now.
Yeah, I
Alright.
just shared some dummy JSON to give an example.
Oh, you have the JSON or?
Yeah, I share an URL that just resolve a dummy JSON. It's in the chat.
Let me get that. So many windows. Okay, so we can use that raw data. So let's do this, just input. What's it called? Text area. Okay, so this is the raw data, right? So right now, looks like we have an object where there's an array inside of there of all the products. So what we can do is we can grab the value here and then set that into a grid element. What we'll have to do is we need to parse into the products side of it so that we can just retrieve the array inside of that, because the grid element requires an array. So let me drop a grid element. We'll just throw it here. After that.
So the same thing I asked you before. So we need to receive that information in some grid, and then we should process it after it.
No, you can receive it in anywhere. I'm just gonna put it in the grid to display it for you. Like I'm just gonna take it from this field, but the source can come from anything. It can be a response of an API call. You can grab it from a file that's in a document. You can grab it from anywhere you need to get the value. But just for simplicity, I just threw it into a field just so you guys can see it visually. And I'm just gonna set that into the grid to answer the second question, which is like, well, how do you display just certain fields from the array? All right, so we'll do that. Products. And I'm just adding a path of products because that's where we're diving into to retrieve just the array that we're after. And I'm just going to drop a grid block here just to use for the display of every row of the grid. Let's refresh here. Okay, so there's the value. And right now I just click the button. All this does is it takes the value that I put in here. I'm drilling into the products just to retrieve the array and setting it into this grid. So what that did is it took every object of that array. We're assuming every object is a record, and it created a separate row for it. But notice no data, nothing's being displayed. And that's because I haven't told the grid row what to do with that information. So automatically, when you set an array into a grid element, every property is available as a local variable within each of the rows. So for example, let's just say we want to display the title for every row. Then what we would do is go to,
Sorry. Yeah, I know you're going to set the data is come from a variable, and you're going to set the title, exactly the name of the property within the object. But in this case, actually, is where we think we found like a boundary for us. Let's say, for example, the button, it's not just a button, but it's a component from another thing. That's where I would like to set something. I don't know, imagine it's not a button, it's an icon, it's a component icon. Where it set information within that grid independently to each one of them as to pass the information to the component and not just to an element. That's why.
Sorry, that was super hard to understand, but guys, I still want to keep helping you, but we've got other people on the call that we have to help. Here's what I would love to ask of you. If you can get something set up, like get it set up, get very specific on what you're trying to do. Like I'm trying to pull this value from here and put it into here, and then chat us in the Discord, and you can you can add us as a collaborator on your project, and we can go in and be like, okay, cool. Like, here's how we would recommend doing that. Or we can spin up a little video to kind of show you. It's just super hard, I think, with the not being able to hear that well, and then just not being able to know exactly what we're trying to replicate. So I'm just going to go ahead and call it right now. That way we can help some other people, but let's keep going on this. Like, just get super clear with me and chat us in the Discord, and like, let us see it through and help you out. Okay. But thank you guys so much. Cause this is really, really good. And this is really helpful. I think probably we need to maybe do some tutorials on components. So I'm going to make a note of that. That way we have something that you guys can like watch, and it's like, cool, here's how it works. But I think, let's see, we had a couple more questions. Let me see, is Lofcar in here? Are you in the call today? No, okay. Kyle, are you in the call? I know you needed some help with.
I am here.
Cool. All right. Are you ready to spin it up? Let's take a look. Okay, cool. So Kyle, you were having an issue with counting numbers from a data collection.
Yeah. So okay. So what I want to do is this number right here. I want it just to add these up, right, and then display right there. So they come over, they add a customer. Oops, I gotta close that. Come over, add a customer, and then it'll populate in here. And then when they want to come to their navigation tab, they can have kind of an overview of how many customers they have, and so on and so on. So I think you said it as a value, but I'm not totally sure on this one.
Yeah, so I think the easiest way is to just get it directly from the grid. I think the grid is on this page itself, right? It's just hidden.
Yep. Let me unhide it real quick.
You don't need to unhide it. Go
Okay.
back to the action where you're setting the value. And here, instead of, so the number, that's where we're outputting it. The value, the second argument, change that to come from an element.
Oh,
yeah, right there. Exactly.
okay.
And then select the grid element that's showing the actual customers there with the cars. And then just add a path of length. And then let's try it. I think that should.
Do I have to set this variable, Dorian? I'm not.
No, you can delete that. You don't
Okay.
need it. That's
Okay.
only if you're trying to put it in a variable first, then use that variable to get the length. But if it's already on the page, just get it direct.
Oh my gosh, you're a genius.
And
Okay,
then
that will subtract and add as I. So if I,
that was the next thing I was gonna say. You'll need to trigger that flow. I think you already have a flow that runs when because you have a data listener.
Yeah.
If you just throw this count customers actions into your page binding, it'll handle it for you. Yeah, so just, oh, yeah, you
already have it. Yeah.
Yeah, then that's it. You can try it. You want to add
Okay.
one?
Yeah, well, I'll delete one and let's just see if that works. Delete 5. Perfect. Thank
Yep.
you. You're awesome.
All right, Kyle, thank you. Okay, Brennan, you are up. So talk us through, we've got 10 minutes left, so let's see if we can help you out, Brennan. So what's the situation you're working with?
Sure. Can I share my screen?
Yeah.
Yes, you can.
Okay. Let me see. Okay. So I have 2 working solutions for what I was trying to do, but I wanted to see if maybe there was a better way to go about it that wasn't so tedious. Basically what I'm working on is a mock-up, a clickable demo for what will eventually be a native app. And so I thought Builder was a pretty quick way to go about this. So I created these bottom navigation tab buttons. And this is my first solution here, where I basically created each set of icons as their own page. And then I wanted to be able to have a visual indicator for which page is currently open, right? So you can see here, if the home page is open, then it's highlighted here. And there's a component at the bottom of the page where it's calling to the page for the highlighted icon, right?
Yep.
So that was my first solution to go about this. The issues I was running into is anytime I wanted to make just a minor change to anything, you have to go through each of these pages and update in each one. So then the second solution I came up with is, let's see, on page load. This is a separate navigation menu from the other ones. I did a bunch of condition switches. Let me open up page load. And you can see here, it's basically checking the browser URL segment. For home and dashboard, they're actually same page, just with different routes. So home and dashboard, and then it checks for broadcasts, news, and then it runs a flow to toggle on that that style class, which highlights that specific div and basically highlight it. So I was just wondering, are these like the only 2 ways to go about this? Is there a better way to do what I'm trying to accomplish?
Yeah, so I would definitely go just having the one page, building it like a single page app. So just this bottom one down here. As far as like changing the color, it just depends on like, are you changing, is that like a text that you're changing to change the color, or is it a different image completely?
No, it's text. These are font awesome icons.
Gotcha. So it's just the color. Yeah, because what I would do is when the user clicks on one of those, I would set an attribute against itself.
Okay.
Maybe like selected equals true.
Okay.
And then what I would do is on that button itself, I would actually create a state. That's the selected state that just changes that color to the color you want. Because then all the buttons just have the same style class. And that works all through CSS. The only JavaScript is just when you're setting the attribute of selected when the user actually clicks on the button.
Try that one as well. Thanks.
And when you do that, one thing you'll need to handle is you'll need to make sure to remove that selected state from all the other buttons.
Right.
At least, so that's how I would approach like the buttons and changing and selecting them. As far as the condition, I noticed that on you had separate conditions.
Yeah.
You actually don't have to have separate conditions for the switch that you're doing. You only just need the one, and you just map additional values down below.
Brennan, you've gone full robot on us.
Oh, I have.
Yeah.
Okay. This is what you're talking about here.
Yeah, so you're testing the UI needs a little cleanup, so it's hard to separate what's what. But initially, there's a grouping there where there's the value you're testing against, and then the flow you're running when it matches that value. And every time you add one, it creates another one of those groups. And then the flow up above, the flow to run if no match found, then you could probably use that one, you know, as your catch-all. Probably just go back to the home page if there's ever a case where it doesn't find anything, you know.
Okay. Okay, awesome. Thank you so much.
Yeah. We can't hear you.
Cora.
Ah, the mute button. Okay. Okay. I think Cracka had a question up at the top. For his Opensea extension wasn't able to get the floor price to show up. I know the Web3 realm is really kind of like Drew and Mark. So should we wait for them, like hand that one off to them? Or do you think you can take a look, D?
Yeah, I can take a look. It's all just
Okay, cool.
Oh.
Cracka, are you still on? We've got 3
Yep.
minutes. Let's go.
Okay. Let's see. Let me share my screen real quick. How do I share? What the heck? Oh, shit. How do I share my screen now? Where's it go? Here we go. Okay. So, I got this to work. Can you see my screen?
Yep, we can see it.
Okay.
Cool. So you got the collections loading.
Yeah, but it's like not even showing here. So like I have the API call in here, right? You told me to put it in the page load, right? I think it's, or is it page binding? Yeah, so it's in the page binding here.
Cool. See that?
I have it all set, but maybe I'm not putting it in the proper place for the value. Shoot. Damn it, where'd it go? So yeah.
Okay, so this is doing the call.
Yeah, the call, and then this is for the this is for the floor
Okay.
price. So
Yeah, I see a problem there. If you go back to the API call in the URL, you don't need the part where it starts with the squiggly bracket where it says collection slug, because all that's already being added as a URL parameter down below. So I think that's invalidating your actual call. So it should just be like that. And
yeah, because I was getting. Oh, okay. Go ahead. Sorry.
And then scroll all the way to the bottom. I want to see what the variable name is that you're setting this.
I think I set it to collection 4. This is what you're looking for?
Yeah. So copy that. And then we're going to need that in the second action below it where it says the element set value. So,
oh, shit.
So that's going to be where we're first getting it. And I'm not sure what the response is, but maybe we can go preview it and capture it in the network. That way I can see how we need to dive into to retrieve the actual floor price.
Oh, okay. So use the actual
Yeah, refresh here and then open the developer tools. Yeah, perfect. And then let's go ahead and connect, and then let's open the collection that you're wanting to test it on.
Oh, like it's like not even, maybe it's just taking too long.
Click on the HTTP call. I know if you're like on their free whatever, then it times out and you can only do a certain amount at a certain, you know, it has limiting. Go to the preview. Yeah.
Okay,
We have to
let me
wait.
check it out. Oh, is that what it is?
Yeah.
Oh, dang it.
Yeah, because if you don't have like an API key, they limit how many requests you can do in an hour, I think.
Well, see, I do have an API key.
Oh, and it's being passed.
Yeah, let me just try and open it back up, see if it works. Yeah, I've been having trouble. See, like it always has this. It has like, well, it shows this. So maybe it's just
Yeah, it
that,
depends what value is being set in there.
Here it goes. That's why. Check if it works. Yeah, it was like having that success fail like in the brackets, like as showing as that variable,
Yeah,
I guess.
it's like showing the response for some reason.
So how would I check my variables on that are set on the page?
One way you can do it
see.
is through the developer tools. Like if you open that back up, and you go to the console and you just type BRW, and then no, just BRW.
Okay.
Like that. Yeah, hit tab and then ._vars, and then hit tab again. Oh, no, vars underscore. There you go. And then just tab and then hit enter. And then if you expand that, you should see the variables that are on this current page, which there's not much on this until you do that request.
I see. Okay. Yeah, I'm gonna have to play around with this. So it looks like some of my variables aren't set properly.
Yeah, and if you want to, you can add me to that project and you can just chat me on Discord once I have access to it and I can go take a look. I'm not too familiar with like what the response looks like from Opensea, so I'll have to go see what that's structured to see, you know, what path we need to go get that floor price. Yeah. Oh, and actually, I'm remembering, I think Drew was saying that they actually don't even provide the floor price when you request the collections anymore. I think he was saying you have to do a separate call now. But I would have to go look that up. I'm not too familiar on that side of things.
Yeah, I think like it's a different endpoint. That's what it was. So I think like the other question I had was basically like how if I had to set like multiple I guess variables from separate API calls, can I set them into the same grid list?
Yeah. Well,
okay. So
the variables, no. You can only set one array into a grid list because then the other one will override the first one. But once you're inside of one, you can set as many as you want. The key is just make sure to give them different variable names, or else you're replacing the existing one with its value.
Oh, okay. So then that's why I would have to do one on this page, one on this page to load each, I guess, you know, thing here, right? Like if I wanted to change this.
Yeah, because I'm pretty sure the floor price now has a separate API key, so that we would have to do a separate call for that one and throw that into that element.
I see. And then when I open this collection row up, I would have to choose another API call endpoint for this last price for each asset.
I think that one stayed the same, which is already included with the second
call.
Yeah,
with the mask and all that.
You shouldn't have to do another. It's just for the floor price that Opensea changed their mechanisms on the response, and they just don't include it anymore.
Okay. All right. Well, thanks. I'm gonna have to work on this. So.
Yeah, and just chat me on Discord or add me to that project. You can just use my email, it's dorian@builder.com. And then I can
sure.
go take a look and see what's going on there.
All right, thanks, appreciate it.
Yeah.
Okay, my lovely people, I gotta call it because we still have work to do today. Thank you all so much for bringing the awesome questions and letting us help out a little bit. We do this every week. So just come join if we didn't get to something today, or chat us in the Discord and let's keep going. But thank you, and I'm hoping y'all have a wonderful rest of the week, and we'll see you next week.
Cool. See you, everybody.
Bye, everyone.
Yeah.